A trigger warning is in effect for this message. As you can see, there are energies already pulled from my personal oracle deck that will serve as the preview message. We got apathetic, worry, attack, stoic, anxious, and at the top where I ended, betrayed. And not coincidentally, they're all black cards, of which is a black and white deck. On the reverse side of each of these cards is a high vibrational energy. Yet today I pulled all of the lowest. Someone is going through an emotional roller coaster so chaotic that they may actually be on the verge of some type of mental breakdown or even meltdown. And it's all on account of the fact that after much deliberation regarding who they've been, who they are, and what they've done with their energy and time, in essence, a verdict was rendered, and it wasn't positive. And now, or soon to be, will be the rendering of a judge's sentencing. And let's just say that capital punishment is very much so on the table. So someone is literally going through the motions of their emotions, up and down, left and right. One minute they go from trying not to be too affected or too bothered, quite indifferent, to the impending judgment upon their head. And then the next minute they're worried. That sometimes leads or may lead to some type of panic attack. And then they are able to either talk themselves down, or with stoic, I'm even feeling like numb themselves out, perhaps self-medicating or drinking or some type of substance that helps them to mellow out and almost be numb and feelingless for a time, of course, before they're sober again and that anxiety flushes over them. Is really the despair of finally having to face what may have been avoided, or what may have been thought to be avoidable, or what they thought they were invincible to for a very long time. For some, or for someone, they never thought the day would come when they would truly be held accountable, not just for one infraction or two, but literally for the scroll of their existence to be read and accounted for, and them to have to actually answer to their indiscretions. And that day is come. It is either come in the physical, in the literal present tense, or it has come and it is impending in a way that is unavoidable at this time. And I really struggle to give this message because I don't really like to dwell in doom and gloom, and I definitely don't like to be the bearer of bad news. So I'm going to hope to turn this around, even physically, by turning these cards around to meditate on the bright side of these energies. But I was convicted to just give the message as it was transmitted to me in the spirit of truth. And so here we are. So I'm going to, and just so you know, like, I started pre-shuffling with my black and white tarot deck, and just plain and simple, death penalty was what rang out. And then I was like, whew, that's a little too heavy for me. Let me go to my deck and see if there's any confirmation or any clarity. And, you know, as you can see, as I said, like all of the darkest frequencies showed themselves and as really kind of like a snapshot of what someone is going through internally, on account of either what they're being accused of, what they've been not just accused of, but at this point, what's the word when you're actually convicted of, and maybe internally, you know, maybe it's a spiritual conviction and not even so much like an actual case in the court of law, but their convictions are what are ultimately wrecking their peace, you know, stealing their peace. And no matter how they try to combat that or resist, it seems to be overruling their best efforts. And then again, we got betrayed at the very top of the deck. And just so you have a point of reference for my cards, each card represents one in the tarot. So apathetic is the King of Wands reversed. Worry is the Four of Swords reversed. Attack is the Seven of Swords, the lower vibration of the Seven of Swords. Stoic is the Queen of Cups reversed. Anxious is the Nine of Swords. And then betrayed is the Ten of Swords. Pardon me. So that's just to give you a tarot snapshot of what these cards represent, but the words definitely speak volumes. So now that we have that going for ourselves, hello, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Of course, it's me, Danae, here with a message for you. At least off the top, it won't be good news. And if you know, you know, I like to always see the brighter side and the silver lining of anything that I can help it. But we're just going to roll with this today. This has been the vibes this week so far, like just cut and dry, raw. It is what it is type of message. Not a lot of rainbows and gumdrops, and that has its place too, you know. So I'm just being obedient to transmit as I'm guided to do so. On this here Friday, May 22nd, it's 3:27 on the clock. So let's see what we got here. Here it is. Somebody is going back and forth, up and down. They probably weighing the pros and the cons, all the possibilities, all the different scenarios and outcomes, maybe trying to consider what resources they have at their disposal or on hand to find their way out of this jam, and they're coming up short at every turn, especially energetically. They don't have the time. They don't have the energy, they don't have the provision, the resource, the access. There's just not enough to go around to make a difference, you know, to change their fate at this point. And you see those waves in the background, like the ships in the back are going up and down, up. Maybe relationships in their lives are also adding to the unrest and turmoil, especially in ways where they would want to have support, or where they would expect to have support. It may be adding more stress or more pressure. And there's certainly a deficit of support in that regard and understanding. It's like nobody can really, it's given that somebody doesn't really have anyone that they can really talk to about what they're experiencing. Not anybody that they feel, first of all, they can trust, and second of all, that can do anything to help them. You know, so it's like they maybe they could vent, but it would be to people that don't really get it, and maybe there's some things that they can't even really disclose, they have to leave out, so they really can't get it. And then people that might get it are people that might not be trustworthy or could be a threat to them actually enhancing their situation. Oh, what was that? Death card. Oh my goodness. I ain't gonna take it because it popped back, but that's where we are right now. It might even be someone, if this is an actual case, like really 3:30 on the clock, and it's the way my clock reads, it's like 33. How my clock is set up on that phone. It's someone that really is praying for a miracle or hoping for some type of divine intervention, a Hail Mary, a something. And even more practically speaking, it could be someone really wanting to appeal a judgment, or wanting to, or weighing their options of what is possible for them. But I'm getting that somebody's run out of appeals. They've run out of chances. Like they've come more or less to the end of the line to petition for a viable appeal that a judge would entertain, I guess, you know, for lack of a better word. So it could be someone even really considering like their legal support, and what do you call it, like their legal team or their legal leverage in a situation, and what they can do, what they can't do. And like I said, their hands are pretty much tied. Like they're the best that they may be able to do at this point, if sentencing hasn't already been rendered, is pray for the best in that regard. Because like I said, the worst of it is on the table. So the best that they can hope for is some type of Hail Mary and mercy from the court, whether we're talking naturally or spiritually, that would at least give them a chance to atone. Even if it's living out a life sentence in some unfavorable way, at least they'd be alive. And then, of course, you know, when it comes to the death penalty, a lot of the times people be on death row for like a decade or 2 or 3. So, you know, there's that. But just the loom of that, of that sentence over your head, is anxiety inducing enough. Like I said, like literally cause for someone to completely melt down without the proper support. That was a Six of Pentacles. I'm sorry. What goes around comes around. As somebody earned, yeah, like no, it's like no arguments or no, well, I don't think it's called petitions, but, and not proposals, but you know, when a lawyer will present something on your behalf to be considered by the court or by the judge, it's like it's falling on indifferent ears. It's like there's not a lot of room for leniency or mercy here with what someone is facing. It's like it'll be a hard sell, is what I'm getting. And betrayed is just, you know, like smacking me in the face up here. And it's just like either someone's betrayals have caught up to them, what unto others or unto themselves. Particularly, I feel like integrity is what was at stake here. Somebody portrayed their own integrity, and they acted out of that nature. And there were a series of infractions that someone is now being incriminated by. And the evidence is, well, it was convincing, because I'm getting like judgment definitely came up in the pre-shuffle. Like there's already been a judgment made and a judgment called. Now it's just a matter of what of it, what is the penalty. And to that point, another phrase that came up for me was the wages of sin is death. And sometimes I think it said the penalty of sin is death. But in the Bible, I'm pretty sure it's written the wages of sin is death. And of course, here it is. There's another side of that speaks about, the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ. So there is the hope aspect of this that is not completely inadmissible, but like I said, it's going to be a hard sell, and it's going to be a bit of a miracle or a Hail Mary to see that level of victory with these high stakes. Like the 10 of Swords in the Betrayed card signifies an ending of an era, and a very devastating one at that. So it's just a matter of how devastating is this going to be for someone. The Page of Cups. Yeah, and this is what I was picking up too on the pre-shuffle. That someone is like dying for mercy and lenience, like almost wishing they could be tried out of ignorance, like a child almost, like try them as a child because they don't know no better, or give me that mercy or lenience, that second chance to redeem myself. And it's like, but you did know better. You weren't ignorant to your actions. You were quite calculated, intentional even, and so therefore you can't now on the back end want to be deemed unaware or unenlightened or innocent, even with the Page of Cups altogether. Like somebody is wanting to still plead their innocence by way, hell, they might be trying to plead insanity, but that ship is sailed, because like I said, it's already been decided. But somebody's trying to plead their innocence by way of ignorance or misguidance, or haven't been maybe even framed or misled or whatever. I don't know what they're trying to claim here, but it's definitely a plea of innocence, or trying to like humble self for that sentencing. Like sometimes, like how you might not testify through your trial, but then at the end you have the option to give a statement, to appeal to the judge for lenience. And maybe that's where this comes in, where now someone is kind of pleading for forgiveness and saying, I'm sorry, but here it is again. It's not being well accepted. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, cool. You're sorry you got caught, but what you've done, how you've acted, who you've been, doesn't give remorse. It doesn't give someone that was just, caught on a bad day, or caught up with the wrong crowd, or misleadingly incriminated, wrong place, wrong time type thing. That's not what it gives. So therefore it can't, like somebody wants to be treated with kids' gloves, with care and consideration, but it's the very opposite of what they did, so it's literally given like the punishment will be fair, at least, Six of Pentacles energy for whatever was committed. Best case scenario, it won't be too harsh. However, it'll definitely be fair and justified. Oh, Six of Wands. It's a victory in court for somebody, or for something. Like something is championing for the win here, or has gained a victory. As I said, like in some case or scenario, there is definitely a winner, as there always is for the most part. Like something is not at a loss here on account of someone else's conviction. It's like finally on account of someone having to answer for their crimes, quote unquote, and actually having to pay for it. It's like it brings justice to those that have been disenfranchised on account of their indiscretion. So like the family that may have been affected sometimes when you see in certain cases, or whatever, whatever the victim, maybe even the surviving victims that may be incentivized by someone's little spider, may be incentivized by someone's conviction. Again, in spirit or in truth, it's like vindication is what is given here. That's what is given, where someone is being convicted, someone else is being, or some other side is being vindicated, maybe even liberated from points of attack and betrayal, if you see where it's fallen. And that's really the true worry and regret here for someone. It doesn't feel so much that, they wish they could take it back because of who they've hurt or how they've hurt or what they've hurt. It's just really that they got caught, and now they don't get to, they lose that liberation and that freedom to be, because they mismanaged it. They abused it. They abused that privilege, and maybe even abused others in the process. All right, let's see. A couple more. I ain't staying in this long. Now, look. Now they're really amping up the apologetic offering from now, not just pleading innocence, but now maybe promising some devotion to change, or like either it's given like projecting like, I'm a changed man because of this. I've already learned my lesson. I've lost so much. Just being here at this point is punishment enough type of energy. Like, you got me. I repent. I reform. I confess. I throw myself at the mercy of the court. They really laying it on thick. But like I said, with the Knight of, like I usually say with the Knight of Cups, with any of the knights, there's usually some ulterior motive. And here it's definitely to be persuasive, maybe even convincing to the point of seductivity in some way, shape, or form, like trying to finesse the ears of whomever will listen at this point. And I mean, with good reason, because it's someone now trying to secure their vitality, quite plainly. It's for survival's sake at this point. But it's definitely given like an amped up, like an apology amplified, by way of making promises that it doesn't appear that they're even equipped to really fulfill at this time. Because the fact of the matter is, If someone were to get off scot-free with no consequence, they would ultimately go right back to what they were doing. There wouldn't be enough, like, you know how they say the prison system is supposed to be for reform, right? Of course, we know, that's arguable, at least most facilities. However, it's if that be the purpose in spirit or in flesh for someone to change their ways, to first see the error of their ways really and truly, not just conveniently for the sake of mercy and forgiveness, but to really come to a deep understanding and acceptance of their misgivings, and want to change and be compelled to do something different, to operate in a different frequency. There, in order for that to be effective, and at least in this case, maybe some people can get off with a slap on the wrist, or maybe this person has many times, and that could be the reason why it's so non-negotiable that they meet some type of consequence for their actions, because they've been given many chances to turn things around and they fumbled it every time, or they backslid into, some version of that lower frequency of themselves every time. That now it's like, well, now you're going to have no choice but to sit and think about what you did, or to be so disenfranchised or uncomfortable that you have no choice but to try to figure out a way to reform yourself, to do something different, to have a different outcome, to create a different experience. And then somebody still might not. You know how it is. People could spend decades in jail and then be institutionalized and have a whole nother layer of negative frequency to navigate. That's a whole nother situation. But I feel like the highest intention for someone finally facing the consequences is really for them to transform. What they do with that grace, and that would be probably the lenience, out of the silver lining here, out of all of it, of what someone is facing. It's like, even if you are kind of sitting on death row for a decade, maybe it's what you do during that time to really prove your devotion to some divine transformation, or just like human reform, like the humanity of it all, if nothing higher, that could change the fate, for someone. That literally, it could be quite bleak of an outlook for someone, and then all of a sudden, oh, that just reminds me of something. Like, I saw a flash of a headline. I didn't really get too deep into it, but somebody that was supposed to be at 3:47 just popped up on the phone. Somebody that was supposed to be executed through lethal injection. I think I saw something like it didn't take or something, and so, or it didn't go out for whatever reason. It wasn't completed, and so he got another chance at life. And I don't know what's about to happen now. Like, is it a matter of going back to the drawing board, trying again, or I don't know for sure. But I saw that headline, and I think it's interesting that it's popping up here too. So like I said, it's like, even unto the final countdown for someone who was scheduled to meet their demise in the physical form, someone was redeemed. In that case, whatever the redemption was, they ain't gone, not yet. So it's like, yeah, so there's always still a chance. There's always still grace, that is plentiful, abundant, in divine resource. At this time, though, for someone, they're really going to have to prove, like to show and prove that they're going to actually do well with that dispensation. And they would have to act, they're now having to actively prove that while they're in the greatest pressure point of their existence. Like I said, emotionally, things are the walls are caving in on them, psychologically, perhaps physically, mentally, I'm sure, like having to overthink all the possibilities and have your fate be in the hands of someone else who may or may not be so sympathetic, is a lot of pressure. But if someone can manage um to to balance that disparity and somehow reform themselves to some evolved state of, if I could see this that way, like where someone just needs to grow up, and evolve, psychologically and spiritually, for real, not just good behavior for time off, but like actually show that their heart is changed for the divine's liking, then there could be a possibility for them, to actually be released. There could be. It could be. But at this point, it's like, although somebody's liberty isn't technically in their hands, it also is at the same time, if that makes sense. It's just a matter of what they will now seize control over and command over, especially in regards to their primal human and spiritual natures. Like, how are you going to ring that all in and ground yourself so that you can weather this fierce storm, as it is indeed, and still keep your wits about you and not make it worse? Because somebody might still be in, like I said, they're still in the process of trying to figure out how to finesse their way out of this. And that's not the type of energy that's going to buy you more grace or barter for lenience, especially not where the divine is concerned. You might look up and get a reasonable judge, but the spirit is not so easily satisfied when it knows your heart and it knows your pure intentions. You can't finesse the spirit. You can't hoodwink the divine. Oh, what's that? The three of wands. Yeah, somebody is trying to maintain some high expectations here, some great expectations, trying to keep their hopes up high, to see the best outcome ahead of them. And that's fine, that's fair, that's understandable. But the reality of this is that there has to be a reckoning. It's just a matter of what that will get to be, especially in the case where someone is still not really fully convicted by their actions any more than they just are convicted by being caught or exposed or tried or, found out, or whatever the case may be. If it's not going to be pure at this point, there can be all the positive projection in the world and the great expectation and the hopefulness that one can fill up on. It won't change the circumstances until someone actually gets real and authentic with who they are and what they're doing and why, more importantly, why they're doing it, why they are the way that they are. That's the only understanding worth holding out for, or the only like ships worth holding out for at this time, is like that understanding with self, the relationship with self, and where that's been distorted somewhere down the line. Maybe perhaps with the Page of Cups in childhood, or at a young impressionable age, that carried on for far too long before it was addressed, and then it was just perpetuated and again justified and numbed or soothed, or there was a distortion in how someone self-soothed. It wasn't healthy, and that spiraled into behaviors that were abusive or aggressive in some type of way. I don't know, but just channeling all of that, it's like it comes a point where you really just gotta get it together. There's no more excuses. There's no more coddling. There's no more blame shifting. There's no alibi. There's only forgiveness due by the divine standards, because nobody is owed forgiveness, really. That's a personal choice. And that forgiveness is an extension of grace, which is relentless. So if you can't do nothing with that, then if you don't see that as abundance in itself, then it ain't looking good, because that's the most foundational resource one could hope for in the grand scheme of things, is at least more grace. And in that regard, sometimes the grace is not necessarily absolution, where you get off, or you don't have any consequences or reprimand. It's just the breath and the opportunity to truly turn things around, to truly repent, to change your mind, to change your ways, to be different. Let me get one more. Oh, golly. This Ten of Swords is relentless, man. Like it's just really signifying that this is the point of no return for someone. Like I said, like if you're not willing to do the work to reform, repent and reform, then this is the fate. Damn, man. This is the fate. It's either going to be a long, grueling bid in the most disparaging circumstances, whether that be actually imprisoned or not, because your life can feel like a prison and you be totally free. But that it's either that, or someone really does bite the bullet to change, to do their best to try to turn things around, to make amends with themselves and with the divine. And it'll still be an ending, but it could also be a beginning on the other side. There still could be time for a beginning, a fresh start. Let's see what we got here. The King of Swords. Oh my gosh. Oh my God, what? Oh, man. Somebody got to get real with themselves. and the devil, in case you didn't notice. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe that. Somebody's either been lying to themselves and or, well, I'll just say they've been lying to themselves and or lying to a lot of people, or just living a lie. Because ain't no other reason for the night. I'm sorry, I keep saying the night. Maybe that could be what somebody was lying about, their status, or portraying a certain level of, of honor and dignity and diplomacy and just outright truth. They were portraying a truth that was not authentic, which could have inadvertently or intentionally bound them to this dark force. Where if you live in a lie, even if you've convinced yourself that it's true, you're going to act out of that illusional, maybe even delusional reality in a way that's unhealthy, perhaps even unhinged, that's either causing harm to you and, your natural self, and or to others, because you may be misleading or deceiving others. It's like there's the betrayal again. It's like the end of that. Somebody can no longer live a lie. They can no longer portray a false identity. They can no longer live a righteous life in the light, but a diabolical one in the shadows, where others are none the wiser. It's like somebody can't do that anymore. They either have to live out the truth of their dark existence or use every fiber of their being to change, to actually be what it is that they've been projecting, or who they've been projecting or presenting themselves to be. And here it is with the Six of Wands. As I said, like, somebody gets liberated on account of this finally coming to a head, because for those that have been impacted or affected by this lie or this deception, they'll be vindicated or liberated, or just balance will be returned if someone can't operate that way anymore. And also just the enlightenment and the like the exposure will be like a victory, will be vindicating, even if there's no settlement perhaps, or if there's nothing to come directly to someone that has been impacted, or in this case perhaps many someones that have been affected. Just knowing that someone can no longer do what they've done to you. They can no longer attack. They can no longer deceive. They can no longer disenfranchise, steal, interfere, corrupt, binds. Like, they just can't do that anymore. Literally almost putting, a demon in handcuffs, and let alone on death row, is a huge victory for humanity. Not just the ones that they have affected, but also for those that could still be affected in a negative way if they were given the opportunity to just carry on business as usual. So it's like a monumental, what do they call it? Like a landmark case or something like that. Maybe actually, but just theoretically, where finally evil is going to be laid to rest. It will be bound by its own indiscretions, and if nothing else, it won't be able to harm anyone else. It'll only be able to inflict harm upon itself, if that's what it chooses to do. And those that, are contractually bound by that agreement of wickedness, they will only be able to infringe upon their own well-being at this point. No more victimizing innocents. No more attacking the unaware or the unsuspecting, and certainly the undeserving. No more exploiting purity. None of that. None of that is allowed anymore. And imagine like somebody going to prison and trying to play them games. They'll find themselves in a bad way real fast. So it's like somebody literally, or being stuck in a realm where there's only more trickster energies like you, because you are not free to impose your energy on anything higher than that vibration. So you just stuck in a circulating a frequency of wickedness among others that may be on that same vibe, and eventually you'll just all destroy each other. That's what it'll come down to. But you won't be able to hurt those that are innocent anymore. So really the only option is to shift, to transform, to ascend, to reform, revive, and be renewed in the mind and in the spirit, and ultimately thrust yourself into a reality where you are in alignment with frequencies that mirror that vibe, or destroy self or be destroyed by the lower energies that you're bound to. So the choice is whomever, sees the grace to make it wisely. But what they don't have anymore is the liberty to wreak havoc on those that they have no jurisdiction over anymore. And that's pretty much everything and everybody outside of themselves. Pretty much. So I'm going to leave that there. I was going to turn over the cards. I will tell you that the bottom of this deck is adoration. And really that's the most pivotal point of the message, is that somebody needs to really get to loving themselves quick. It ain't even about nobody else at this point. If they don't get to loving themselves at the very depth and core of their being, they're going to be eliminated. There's literally no purpose or place for hate and fear in the world that the divine wishes to exalt. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.